Many people are asking for additional legislation. We're not ruling that out, but we think we're going to take a pause here.
The failure to act will be far more harmful than acting to solve these problems.
When the Republicans say we need a pause, as I keep saying, there's no pause in hunger and rent and your bills.
America will again and soon be open for business. This is what it is. It's this period of time. I think you're going to have a very strong transition, and then I think the fourth quarter is going to be incredibly successful.
Back in March, the U.S. economy was on the verge of another Great Depression. We shut down over a third of the U.S. economy just overnight. Over 20 million jobs were lost in the span of a few weeks.
Congress only grumbled a little bit when it passed trillions of dollars of aid, but that was one of the only bipartisan moments of this entire saga.
Since then, that moment has really dissipated, and we have not been able to again forge that bipartisan compromise that's allowed emergency relief to get into the hands of the American people, even when the need continues to be great.
It is imperative that we address the needs of the American people with clarity on how we proceed. That is why today, House Democrats are introducing the HEROES Act.
After all this frenetic legislating right as the pandemic hit America, things suddenly stalled in the late spring and early summer. Democrats were looking ahead to the pandemic getting worse in the fall, and they were hearing from state and local officials across the country that municipalities and cities and states risk having to make drastic cuts in their services.
Republican and Democratic mayors, governors, and the rest all want this bill to happen. Time is very important. We have lost time.
Part of the reason aid has been slow to get out is that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has a very sizable fraction of his caucus that not only opposes what Democrats want to spend, but is really opposed to any new federal spending.
We have spent more than enough money. We cannot spend our way out of this.
We got the virus from China, and now we're going to be more dependent by borrowing more money from China.
There's a day of reckoning. You know, our kids, our grandkids, they're going to pay for this.
There are ways to write legislation that it doesn't go towards, for example, shoring up pension systems, but they started calling this the blue state bailout.
President Trump was listening a lot to sort of conservatives within his administration that were nervous or opposed to spending much more money.
Another $3 trillion package just seems off target to me.
But then the president did a pretty dramatic about-face and started pushing very aggressively for another round of stimulus.
We'll be asking for additional stimulus money because once we get this going, it'll be far bigger and far better than we've ever seen in this country.
If there's any red line, it's on litigation. The litigation epidemic has already begun.
I want to help the unemployed, but I don't want to pay you more in unemployment than you made it work.
We are unified in our support for the $600. They are in disarray.
What happened over the summer is that Republicans sought to put more money into the Paycheck Protection Program. They were hearing from small businesses across the country that were saying, we need more help for this. And the response from Democrats was that they weren't going to put more money into PPP unless they could also make sure that the states and cities that were bracing for huge revenue hits were taken care of.
You also start to see divides emerge among the issue of unemployment insurance. Republicans were starting to argue that, maybe not cut $600 altogether, but maybe trim it to like $300 or $400.
There's been another big thorn in the side of these negotiations for months. Should Congress pass legislation to shield businesses from lawsuits about the coronavirus?
A lot of that aid expired at the end of July and early August. And what's happened in the last few months, nearly 8 million Americans have fallen into poverty. There simply are not enough jobs right now for all of these still 20 million people on unemployment to find work again. There was a lot of surprise in May and June at how quickly parts of the economy came back. The stock market had rebounded by the end of August, the most unequal recession since World War II. And it may be the most unequal recession in all of US history. We just don't have good enough data before World War II to be able to definitively say that.
The American people had hoped that the Senate would be spending this week finishing up another bipartisan agreement on coronavirus relief. But unfortunately, Senate Democrats chose to block it all.
McConnell saw the pressure that was coming from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Democrats who had kept passing these sweeping packages. That package from McConnell gave Republican candidates cover, saying, we passed this bill. Chuck Schumer filibustered it.
I would like to see a bigger stimulus package, frankly, than either the Democrats or the Republicans are offering. I'm going in the exact opposite now, okay?
As the president looks really far behind in the polls, the White House came out with a $1.8 trillion economic relief proposal, and it included a lot of Democratic priorities. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi rejected this package.
What's wrong with $1.8 trillion?
Well, you know what? Do you have any idea what the difference is between the spending that they have in their bill and that we have in our bill?
Pelosi's defenders will say, we may have not accepted the $1.8 trillion offer from the White House, but that offer was never really on the table because Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans were not serious about passing it.
Bottom line, Madam Speaker, are Americans going to get relief before Election Day?
Well, that depends on the administration.
It was fruitless at the end of the day because neither side were ready to really make a deal that close to an election.
We have worked very hard to put together a $908 billion framework for COVID relief.
What really started to break the logjam were a group of moderate/dealmaker types. And in a surprise, Pelosi and Schumer actually endorsed this group's framework, almost kind of isolating McConnell at this point.
That is a lower amount than the White House put on the table earlier. When sort of asked about the discrepancy, Pelosi gave a very full-throated defense.
That was not a mistake. It was a decision, and it has taken us to a place where we can do the right thing without other, shall we say, considerations in the legislation that we don't want.
As much criticism as she got from, even her own ranks, particularly before the election, about holding out on a broader COVID relief package, if you look over the broad trajectory of these negotiations, she did come down considerably. Whereas Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he did come up a little bit, but not all that much.
One reason Democrats were willing to accept a lower number and get a coronavirus stimulus bill through is they're really hoping that President-elect Joe Biden gives a reset to all these negotiations when he becomes president. Is there a way that he can bring Republicans on board in a way that President Trump hasn't, especially because Trump has been missing from these negotiations?
We're not talking about a V. We're talking about a super V based on all of the numbers that you see.
I think what's really shaken a lot of Republicans recently, it's clear that momentum in this recovery has stalled. There's still nearly 10 million people who lost a job in March and April who haven't gotten it back.
Congress has failed to act for months, despite knowing that the American economy faces a series of extremely dramatic cliffs. We are looking at 12 million people right after Christmas losing their unemployment benefits. As many as 30 million American renters will be at risk of eviction. Tens of millions of people face utility shutoffs, and we're also seeing paid family leave benefits for tens of millions of people potentially expire.
The big question here that will forever remain unanswered is, could Trump have used his power and his authority with Republicans to bring them over? And then something could have been done much sooner.
The widespread view among economists is you have to do something right now. The real risk here from an economic perspective is the fear of a double-dip recession. Most economists and Wall Street analysts think that jobs won't be back fully until 2024. And that is going to hurt those families and reverberate throughout the economy for a lot longer to come.